Food deprivation has been studied extensively, partly because of hunger strikes and famine research. The body has a whole backup system for it. When food stops coming in, the body burns through stored glucose first, usually within a day. After that, it shifts into using fat reserves for energy, a process called ketosis. Once fat runs low, the body starts breaking down muscle for fuel as a last resort. It's brutal, but it's a functioning system. The body knows exactly what to do without food, one step at a time. There are documented extreme cases that show just how far this backup system can stretch. In 1971, a man in Scotland who was severely overweight underwent a supervised medically monitored fast that lasted 382 days, drinking only water, tea, coffee, and taking vitamin supplements. He survived it under close medical supervision, losing an enormous amount of weight but staying alive the entire time. That's over a year without solid food. The human body, it turns out, is remarkably built to ration itself when calories stop coming in. Sleep deprivation doesn't have that kind of backup plan. There's no stored reserve of sleep sitting somewhere in the body waiting to be used. When sleep stops, there's no fallback system, no secondary source to draw from. The brain just starts failing at the one thing it absolutely cannot skip. The most extreme documented case of sleep deprivation happened in 1964. A 17-year-old named Randy Gardner stayed awake for about 11 days as part of a science fair experiment, monitored the whole time by researchers, including a young Stanford sleep researcher who would go on to build a career studying what happened to him. By day 3, he was already struggling with memory and concentration. By day 4, he was having hallucinations, mistaking a street sign for a person. Paranoia and irritability came next. His speech started slurring, his coordination broke down, and by the end, some researchers who studied the case afterward described his cognitive function as comparable to certain forms of temporary psychosis. Remarkably, after all that, he did recover fully once he slept, but researchers have said that kind of experiment likely wouldn't pass an ethics review board today. And there's a reason sleep deprivation causes damage so much faster than starvation does. Sleep isn't just rest. It's when the brain runs its cleanup system, clearing out waste proteins that build up during waking hours through something researchers call the glymphatic system, essentially a plumbing network that flushes toxins out of brain tissue while you're unconscious. One of those waste proteins, beta amyloid, is the same one linked to Alzheimer's disease when it accumulates over long periods. Without sleep, that cleanup never happens, and the waste just keeps piling up night after night with nowhere to go. There's also a temperature control problem that most people don't know about. Deep sleep helps regulate the body's internal thermostat. In extreme sleep deprivation studies with rats conducted at the University of Chicago in the 1980s, studies that would almost certainly never be approved today, the animals were kept awake using a rotating platform that woke them the moment they started to doze off. Within about 2 weeks, every single rat died. Not from any single identifiable cause, but from total systemic collapse. Their body temperature became impossible to regulate. They developed sores on their skin, and their immune systems gave out entirely, leaving them vulnerable to infections their bodies would normally have fought off easily. Meanwhile, in comparison studies, food-deprived rats under similar monitored conditions survived far longer, sometimes several times as long, before showing comparable organ failure. Here's the part that makes this even stranger when you think about it evolutionarily. The human body treats missing meals as routine. It's built survival mechanisms around it because throughout most of human history, food scarcity was common and expected. Droughts, failed harvests, long winters. Bodies that could ration themselves through lean periods were the ones that survived to pass on their genes. But missing sleep isn't something the body evolved a backup plan for, because in a natural environment, staying awake for days on end almost never happened without some other emergency already threatening survival. A predator nearby, a flood, a fire. In other words, extreme sleep loss was never really a standalone problem in nature. It was always a symptom of something worse already happening. So the body treats hunger like a manageable inconvenience and treats sleep loss like a 5-alarm fire. One triggers a controlled, gradual shutdown of non-essential systems, prioritizing survival of the brain and vital organs for as long as possible. The other triggers a rapid unraveling with no real safety net, because the system was never designed to handle it as an isolated event. This is also why catching up on sleep only works to a point. A few extra hours of sleep can restore alertness in the short term. Most people feel noticeably better after one good night following a rough week. But researchers studying chronic sleep debt have found that deficits built up over weeks or months don't fully reverse with a single long sleep. Some of the damage lingers even after a person feels caught up. Measurable declines in memory consolidation, slower reaction times, impaired glucose regulation that can resemble early signs of insulin resistance, and a weakened immune response that leaves people more susceptible to getting sick. In some long-term studies, chronic sleep restriction over months was linked to changes in brain structure that didn't fully normalize even after extended recovery sleep. There's also a psychological angle that makes sleep deprivation uniquely dangerous compared to hunger. When people are extremely hungry, they generally know they're hungry, and they know why they feel bad. But one of the most consistent findings in sleep research is that severely sleep-deprived people are remarkably bad at judging their own impairment. Their reaction times can degrade to levels comparable to legal intoxication, while they genuinely believe they're functioning normally. That disconnect is part of why drowsy driving remains one of the more underestimated causes of serious accidents. The person behind the wheel often doesn't realize how compromised they already are. So the next time pulling an all-nighter feels like no big deal, it's worth remembering that the body would rather go without food for a week, or in extreme documented cases over a year, than go without sleep for even a handful of days. One of those is something the body evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to survive gracefully. The other one, it never really had to. If this channel just made you rethink your last all-nighter, hit subscribe. There are plenty more strange questions waiting for answers.